I call to order the meeting of the Subcommittee on Land, Miscellaneous Provisions Amendment Regulation 2018. So there are just the three of us who would like to be the chairman. Yes? Mr. Abraham Shack. No, Abraham Shack, will not do it because I don't want to be involved in any matter related to land. Any other suggestions? How about Dr. N. Chang? Well, I suggest that Mr. Abraham Shack should be the chair. You can refrain from commenting on it. You can just preside over the meeting as chair. Mr. Chu, would you like to be the chair? I want to ask questions because we're mostly concerned about roads, not buildings. All right, so as instructed by you, any other nominations? Anyone seconds? I second that. Thank you. So let's call this meeting to order and invite the administration to come in. It should be quick.
Do
we need a deputy chair? No. All right.
May
I welcome the administration. I won't read out the attendance list. We have the list ready. And you have a small team here. We'd like to give a start and proceed to reading the paper. And I'd like to invite the administration to walk us through the amendment regulation. Thank you, Chairman. We propose to amend the Land Miscellaneous Provisions Regulations to amend Schedule 3 of Cap 28A in relation to the excavation permit fees and the three costs in order to achieve full cost recovery gradually and to avoid steep fee increases. In terms of the administrative fees for the excavation permits, we are proposing to increase the fees by 10 to 15%. As for the three economic costs in relation to the extension of an excavation permit to be borne by the Highways Department, we propose a percentage increase of 8%, as this could provide an incentive for the excavation permit holders to complete the works as soon as possible. Regarding the fees and costs, they do not have implications on the day-to-day living of the public. A permit is needed only when excavation works are required on public roads for the purpose of, say, public utilities installation and by government works departments. The fees and costs were adjusted in 2015 in the last exercise, and due to the increase of fees and standards of living, we need to propose another increase. As for the details, I think they're all set out in the paper. So perhaps I'll pause here and I'll be happy to take questions from members and provide a more detailed explanation. So let's just take a look at paragraph 6 of the paper, which refers to the timetable. The expiry of the scrutiny period should be the 28th of November. If we need to move a resolution to extend the scrutiny period, it should be the 9th of January. So I'm referring to paragraph 6. And that is the notice period, or the deadline for giving notice of amendment, which will be the 21st of November, and In the case of an extension, it will be the 2nd of January 2019, and date of reporting to the House Committee, 16th of November 2018. I suppose if we could complete our work today, we might be able to do the reporting on the 16th. Otherwise, it should be the 14th of December. So this is just for members' information regarding the legislative timetable. Do we need to have public consultation? Members? Chairman? I think let's start with this meeting. If it's really necessary, then before we adjourn this meeting, we can decide on the matter. Yes, Mr. Zhu, I agree with Dr. N. Chang. All right, so I'll open the floor for members to ask questions. Dr. N. Chang. Chairman, in relation to the land miscellaneous provisions regulations, this exercise relates to the fees and economic costs and their increase. For example, due to extension of the permit, we support this increase. But you may recall, Chairman, that when we were young, we used to see a lot of excavation works on roads. After one public utility company excavated the roads, another would come in, followed by, developer, and then a gas company, and then the government, MTRC, Highways Department. And then there would be continuous excavation works along the road. It's inconvenient for the public. It's also detrimental to businesses. What's more important is that traffic congestion is the result of one lane being closed for roadworks. It's the cause of traffic congestion. So earlier, we asked whether it is possible to reduce excavation works. And we understand that underground resources also belong to the government. And if we allow utility companies to lay cables and ducts underground so indiscriminately to the extent that there is no more room left, I think it's getting more and more confusing, even for government departments, as they open up the roads, and there will be a lot of follow-up work. So I wonder whether the government could consider in new development areas in the future lay underground ducts in the first place so that no excavation will be needed. And then every now and then you can have the openings of new sections of roads for the laying of underground cables so that you don't need to have incessant excavation works. Another point is that for a stretch of the road, let's say a quarter or half a kilometer, from one block to another, between the road junctions, excavation works could be completed overnight. But the problem is we're allowing excavation work to carry on for prolonged periods of time, covering too wide an area, so that they would just do it so slowly, and it's really inconvenient for the public.
So I feel that the administration, though, is proposing, because of the increase in economic costs, to approve charges for the XP. It's good, but then I still feel that you're only considering economic costs as the reason for increasing the fees. But have you considered the economic costs of the people, what the public has suffered? How about shops? If people can't come near the shop, then that would affect their business. So all the accumulated costs may exceed the amount of increment here. What we should do now is, well, I know there are many things that we can do or should do. For example, in the future, I think we need to estimate the cost for shops. Some shop owners are complaining a lot because they have lost their customers because their entrance are being blocked by roadworks. So you have to take into account the costs suffered by shop owners. Of course, if you take that into account, that means the fees would be very high. But still, you're achieving a deterrent effect. Still, you're forcing the companies concerned to finish their works ASAP. In the long run, I also hope that, Chairman, under the road, what about the pipes and ducts? What are they like? You don't know what the situation is. I think if you have an X-ray check of it, you just see a whole very dense concentration of pipes. We're not moving those pipes and ducts, but for all new areas, can we make it that, like in some advanced Western countries, that there should be actually a pipework map showing clearly where the pipe should be laid, and also what size of pipes and ducts should be put there. A very clear illustration of the network underground. So, Secretary, even though you're here to talk about the fees, but Ms. Chair asked a high-level question. She criticized the repair works and the implications and the nuisances they've caused. This is not the first time the question was asked. You promised before to have some box culvert installed. So can you elaborate on your future plans in relation to road works? How are you going to handle them? And also, secondly, can you explain, if you are to tie the fees to the cost, then you are actually charging people more for a longer period of time. That means that the efficiency could be low. With a low efficiency, that would affect people who are due to pay. So can you actually give an answer to Ms. Chang's question? Next is Mr. Eddie Chu. Who would answer? Okay, let me just respond to Ms. Chang's questions. I think she raised a number of points. Well, it's all under, the same concern. Well, let me try to address your concern and tell you what the government is doing right now. I know that the XP and these indications on the traffic, impact on the traffic. I know before the roadworks begin, we would require on the temporary road realignments, we need to get the approval of the Transport Department and Traffic Police first. And we've got utilities companies that need to lay pipes and ducts underground. I think there are 18 such utilities companies. And so there are a lot of public utilities underground, indeed. As for the Highways Department, whether they have tried to make improvements in the situation, let me say this. Over the past 2 years, we have actually enhanced our target so as to minimize the time involved and improve the quality concerned, so as to minimize the excavation time. Since 2015, the Highways Department on emergency roadworks, they have actually improved the flow chart for giving the XP. And for repair works that are not properly done, they would enhance monitoring so that the public utilities companies, when they carry out the road repair works, there would not be unnecessary delay. As for the penalty system, the merit point system, we have strengthened that as well. For the holder of the XP, they are now actually obliged to comply with our requirements. So those are the measures that have been implemented in the past years. Looking ahead, how are we going to further improve the situation? I have called on the public works departments to, when in the case of doing excavation works, they need to carry out proper site investigation and also carry out investigation on or examination of underground pipes. And we will ask the relevant department to do a good work or proper job in the investigation. And Ms. Chen just mentioned about whether there are public pipes underground. And this year we have kickstarted a study which will last a year, during which we will examine in new areas whether we can install public systems or a public location where all the utilities and pipes are concentrated together, so that it will not require roadworks in various parts of the road. But there are difficulties involved in this respect because the various utilities and facilities actually have different repairment requirements for different pipes. So for underground utilities, we can try to take a bold step and to implement some pilot schemes first. As for the economic costs, estimate of that, and whether an excavated area can be better monitored so that it will not be too extensive, I would ask the Highways Department to supplement. Highways Department. Thank you. As for the excavation areas, in busy roads, the road closure area would require approval by the traffic police and the transport department. We would only allow for a segment to be closed, so as not to do a heavy blow to the road traffic. As for the economic costs, how we estimate it? Well, the transport department helps us with calculating the costs, mainly on the basis of now that with a section of the road closed, what impact it would have on the traffic flow, and also the amount of traffic delay to be caused, and times the hours, and we times the hours with the closure period and the traffic load. So we expect about 7 to 8% of the cost a year in a year. 7 to 8% increase. Ms. Chang, actually, in 2016, there were 20,000 plus applications for excavation, most of which asking for an extension would involve an additional cost of 10%. Is it 10%? Less than that, right? But no matter what, it's not a lot. So the point is, why is it that many people do feel that how come in the block an excavation, can last so long, and repair works are never finished, it seems. So one company excavated the road and then the other came and then do the same thing. And the whole process could, in the end, take up 2 years. So we were just trying to figure out what is going on. Are you being too lenient with the applicants? As I just said, in some roads, maybe short roads, and maybe a quarter of a km, and yet you have given them an allowance of 1 month. Is that the case? If that's the case, then they may just do the work very slowly. So have you got any criterion to gauge the applications? That is, they help you decide for distance, for an area, how long should it be finished? When's the longest period in which it can be finished? My understanding is that for different types of facilities, their time needed, we have criteria on that, except for very special works like trenchless excavation and so forth, depending on the scale of the work as well. Underground utilities, as for whether we're giving them too long a period, the Highways Department does play a monitoring role. If they found that a site stopped works for no reason at all, then there is penalty imposed. So maybe I'll ask the Highways Department to supplement. Mr. Ho? Thank you, Chairman. As for the monitoring of excavation works, in 2012, we implemented a demerit point system. If someone was found to be underperforming, then we would actually see what demerit points they've accumulated, and the person could be liable for penalty. And last year, we further strengthened the demerit point system, so the penalty is further increased. So that public utilities, when they're carrying out roadworks, they need to install proper fencing and make sure that a fenced-off area is where works are underway. We hope that they are really properly doing the work involved. Chairman, my question is, but have you got any criteria at all? So you're just saying that, well, deduct the points if they're not doing it properly. But what do you mean? Say if two workers just go to the toilet halfway through the work, would you deduct their points because of that? So what are your exact criteria? And for example, and also you need to tell us what is your criterion, for example, for distance allowed for certain type of work and the maximum or minimum days allowed for. Yeah, we do have guidelines. I think the Highways Department, could you supplement? Do you have guidelines? Yeah, we do have our own criteria. In giving the approval for the XP, we follow standard guidelines.
What should the depth be for a certain kind of works, or how big the trench should be? We do have a set of standards. We worked with the Hong Kong USD and the Polytechnic University in 2012 in drawing up the set of standards. Can you tell us the details if there is the existence of standards? I just don't understand why each project takes so much time. Do you have an example for them? Well, let's put it this way. Let's say if I want to lay a fiber optics cable of about 300 meters from one junction to another, how much time would you give this for this project? Can you tell us, depending on the length of the road and the time to be given? And also for fiber optics installation, do you have the box culvert, or do you have the ducts ready, or would the excavation be needed? Well, let them answer your questions first. Let me give you an example. Say if the DSD is required to lay a pipe of 20 meters long and 150 millimeters in diameter, about 3 to 4 meters deep, then the department will give about 1.5 months. All right, you can follow up on the matter in writing. Yes, we can. Mr. Ju. Thank you, Chairman. I have a number of questions. First, Dr. N. Chang just now asked about the standards. I want to know whether the Highways Department issues a permit unilaterally on this basis, or whether there is any room for negotiating the number of days allowed for excavation before proceeding to extension of the permit. That's the first question. Let them answer your first question first. Highways Department. We have the standard, and when applying for the permit, the applicant can follow the standard time frame, but if the circumstances are very special, such that the standard time frame cannot capture their sort of works, they can file a separate application explaining why more time will be needed. And when examining the XP application, we'll consider the reasons, and if the reasons are justified, we may allow a longer time frame. And that's how we approve the XP with the time set out at the time of issuance. Mr. Zhu, after hearing from Dr. N. Chang, I understand her impression is that there are many excavation works going on for long periods of time. Do you have figures to convince us that there has been an improvement? Because in 2013, in answering Dr. N. Chang's written question, you mentioned that before 2004, there were 50,000 cases, and then between 2010 and 2012, the figure came down to some 20,000, and then in 2015, there was a fair hike. What about the situation between 2015 and 2018 regarding the total number of excavations and the percentage of cases requiring extension? In 2004, we have close to 50,000 applications of XP. So the figure goes back up to 50,000. No, I was referring to 2004. And then in 2008, the figure came down to some 30,000, whereas in 2017, the figure stood at about 20,000. So regarding the number of XPs in Hong Kong, I can say that the figure continues to drop. What about the percentage of extension? In 2017, last year, there were about 1,300 XPs requiring extension. So that's about 6 to 7% comparing to the total number of permits being 20,000. Thank you. I'd like to get an understanding, because what I'm thinking is that when you consider the economic cost for extending a permit, apart from full recovery of costs and undermining the impacts on the public, you would also like to decrease the number of extensions, right? Is that your policy objective? In terms of monitoring excavation works, we look at the actual time spent, as the director just mentioned, the nature of works, and then following their standards, how much time should be needed. But frankly, in the course of works, there are two major factors affecting their works timetable. Such as the weather, because there are trenches, and if the weather is rainy, that you may have puddles of water, and there are also a lot of underground utilities. So at the outset, site investigation is needed before excavation is carried out. but because of the time lapse between planning and the actual construction works, there may be changes to those underground utilities, say because of emergency repair, and there might be some changes when the actual excavation takes place. These are the two major factors which would lead to a departure from the estimated works timetable. Well, weather is something that we find difficult to control, but what about underground utilities? Our observation is that there is a problem with the accuracy of information regarding underground utilities. And we are beginning to work with the Highways Department to see how proper records of these underground facilities can be kept. It is a difficult task. They don't have a very good record kept because they only have some two-dimensional drawings with all the existing public utilities underground. Whereas for new roads in new development areas, we can prepare a more accurate set of records regarding underground utilities. With modern-day technology, it shouldn't be difficult. After that, we can just keep the record and make it convenient for future excavation works. It is not an easy task, but we are working in this direction. And actually, Assistant Director Ho, together with the colleagues from the Lands Department, they are all working on this and will be heading this direction such that in the future there won't be a situation where ad hoc changes are needed because of inaccurate information of underground utilities. This will be our goal, I should say. Yes, Chairman, I have another question. I'd like to, before I respond to Mr. Ng, I would like him to explain something to me, which I find puzzling as I read this paper. Be it paragraph 8 of the background brief prepared by the Legislative Secretariat or the oral or the reply you gave to the written question in 2013, you mentioned that economic costs will have to be recovered from permittees who extended excavation works without justifiable reasons. And the focus are on these words, justifiable reasons. Just now, PS mentioned unexpected delay due to unforeseen weather situation. I wonder if you play a part in making judgment whether there are justifiable reasons for you to charge one level of fee and another with justifiable reasons. Because according to the regulation, there seems to be only one tier of fees. So please explain to me. Do you understand my question? Well, in principle, fees are charged based on the stipulations of the excavation permits and the delay. Can you just give me a simple answer? Is it an across the board? Well, Mr. Chu, please let him answer your question first. It's very difficult to conduct a meeting here if you two start a dialogue. So please pause, wait for my instruction before you answer, because otherwise it will be difficult to follow up on your point. Please proceed. In principle, costs in relation to extension will be charged based on the extent of the extension. So that means you have standards, as you mentioned when you replied to Dr. N. Chang's question, and you just follow the standards. Yes, Mr. Chu. Well, because in the background brief, I read that there would be recovery of economic costs from permittees who delayed without justifiable reasons. But according to the PAS version, as long as there is an extension, a punitive fee would be charged with or without justifiable reasons. So I'd like to know the reason why you put these words in. Well, let him answer your first question first before you ask the next one. It's very easy. Just let them answer your question first. Maybe I'll invite Mr. Ho, Assistant Director, to take your question. Well, for example, according to the XP, there is a delay and the permittee applies for an extension, say, of 20 days. If there is no justifiable reason, we need to charge the permittee for these 20 days. And the level of fee will be as set out in the paper. Let's say if the delay is justified, say if typing signal number 8 is hoisted, or if there are unforeseen circumstances unrelated to the permittee, they're leading to a delay of 2 days, we will allow the permittee to deduct the 2 days of fees from the sum total. I don't see this stipulated in the regulation. That's the first point. Second point, delay with or without justifiable reasons. My understanding of these words is whether there is any justifiable reason within the permitted period. Let's say within the period of the permit, there have been 10 days of black rainstorm warning, then this would be allowed. But according to the assistant director, she seems to say that the permittee will not be charged even if there is a delay of 10 days after the permitted period. But, well, can you just explain the regulation and answer Mr. Ju's question? What is stipulated in the regulation, and can you justify your approach? According to the regulation, if the permittee applies for an extension, we need to recover the economic costs. All right, but what happens if the extension comes with a justifiable reason, such as a black rainstorm warning? Right, within the extension period, if there is black rainstorm warning or other factors causing the delay, then within that extension period, we can deduct the days affected. Yes, Mr. Chu? Where is it stipulated in Cap 28? What provision? Who would take the question? Please, don't answer unless you're sure. You can go back and check the papers.
Okay. So one more question here. Just looking at the paper, my understanding is that if you cannot provide justifiable reasons and cause delay and economic costs being incurred, then the fees will be higher. For strategic roads, is up to $20,000 a month, a day. So I'd like to, can I call the penalty? And then looking at it in the context of your policy goal to reduce the days concerned. So if you try to pack the two, then can you look at the trend of the past decade? And if you found that increasing the fine in the wake of a delay could cause people to be more cautious, then would that be a factor considered? Just then, PAS said that, well, suggested some kind of direction saying that you want to use other ways to reduce the ratio between the two. But now this regulation put before us is about increasing the costs, the fees, because you are for the general XP there will be an increase of 15%. In 2015 to 18 there will be an increase of 15%. That is on average 3 to 5% each year. As for the fine, it will be an increase of 7%. That is 2% per year. So you're saying that the situation has improved, so that you don't think you need to increase the fine even in accordance with at the level of inflation. Is that your thinking? So that there's this difference between 15% and 7%? Yes, for the amount or rate of increase. They all are due to the Highways Department, Transport Department, and Police's expenditure or expenses in approving the permit. So we're only trying to recover the full cost. As for the economic costs, for that element, we basically analyzed based on past data provided by the Transport Department. So it's all based on our estimates, and we found that on the basis of that, the current level actually results in 92%. Therefore, we propose an increase of 8%, about 8%. So maybe Mr. Ho, the Assistant Director, could supplement. Yes, as I briefly mentioned, the economic costs actually are derived by the Transport Department based on the types of roads and the impact of an excavation on the traffic flow and time delay cost to road users. And the cost is worked out on the basis of it's an hourly cost that we looked at. Okay, Mr. Chu, Ms. Chang is after you. Oh, Ms. Chang first then. Chairman, I'd like to ask about that in April this year, the Directive Audit Report 70, number 70, Chapter 4, on excavation works. Actually, there are actually total of 7-8 chapters on the issue. And the Director of Audit also came up with proposals, 1 to 11 proposals actually altogether. And I know that you are responding to the audit committee's recommendations, saying that you agree with them. So I'd like to know, have you followed up on those proposals then? And what improvements have you made as a result of that? Well, the Public Accounts Committee is following up on the issue. Once it's accepted the proposal, we have a timetable for us to follow, and we need to see whether all the departments have followed the proposal recommendations before closing the file. So there are many eyes actually on the improvements being made. But you can tell us now that have you accepted that now that you've accepted the 11 proposals by the audit committee, and since Ms. Chang is so concerned about the Director of Audit's report, so maybe you can give an answer here. Yeah, as for the Director of Audit's report, there are proposals, of course, on improvement measures. And Highways Department, Development Bureau, Lands Department are also involved. I think on the Development Bureau, I can elaborate on the 3 areas that we need to make improvements in. The first is we need to, as I mentioned, we need to ask the Public Works departments that before they carry out a work, they need to carry out detailed investigation of the underground pipes. So we are getting this message across to the Public Works Department. And the second point is right now the space underground is where we need to study control measures and effective management. So already with the Highways Department and Lands Department, we are studying using co-sharing data system to keep proper records, better records of underground utilities. We've begun that work. But we need to ask the government departments to submit completion reports, works completion reports. And we also need to ask the public utilities to provide the same sort of document. It's all quite complicated, but we're moving in the direction. So that by co-sharing data on a common platform, we can have better management of underground utilities. The third area is, as I mentioned earlier, we are looking at whether in new areas we can use more box culverts. As I mentioned, since June this year, we have begun a study, and in 2019, hopefully, the study will shed light on what more we can do in new areas. And we'll continue to follow up on the work. And I'll ask the Highways Department to talk about their improvement measures. Chairman, maybe the PAS later on can tell us more about their initial concepts at this stage. So, Highways Department then? What is your responsibility? What are you doing? This is actually related to the regulation put before us today, because if you're not doing a thorough piece of work, then you are charging people. We're looking at the fees concerned, but we want to get to a deeper understanding of the whole issue. It's not just about proving the fees alone here. Why are you charging the fees? We need to know what you have done on your part and whether you have really strictly followed your follow-up on your tasks. So that's why we're asking all those questions. Yes, very right. You're very right, Chairman. Highways Department? Yes, as for our department, our follow-up work, basically, we have carried inspections of holders of XP and see where they are doing proper works at the sites. For the proposals, based on the proposals, our inspection rate is about 80+%. Therefore, each 100 XP, we've carried out inspections of 88 approximately. And the Director Order asked whether we can increase the rate. We are actually improving our mechanism. In the past, we didn't increase the rate because, or didn't inspect as much because we only pay attention to the emergency XP or XP that involve a shorter period of time. But now we are improving our mechanism so that we can inspect different kinds of XPs. As for the Directive Order report, right now we are asking the XP holder to submit to us pictures and records of their work. In the past, those documents were submitted late to us, but now we're going to step up our work so that all the XP holders can submit their records to us early enough. We also have a team of inspectors and another team of prosecutors. So for excavation works, that are not properly done, our inspection team will inform the XP holder, asking them to make improvements immediately. If there's no improvement made at all, then we will refer the case to our prosecution team to consider taking prosecution action. So the work of the two teams actually is being improved, and we're trying to speed up the communication between the two teams so that prosecutions can be initiated earlier. Ms. Low, would you like to supplement on the members' questions on your work in relation to the Director of Audit report? Yes, we are helping Development Bureau study the underground facilities and how there can be a platform where data of completion reports can be uploaded and shared by all. So we're still carrying out the platform work. And, Chairman, I heard that you're going to increase the rate of inspections. That's good, but I'd like to ask still. Say for a certain segment of a road, 150 meter in length, for example, you need to lay down pipes there, and you give them 1.5 months to do that. Well, how long has this criterion been adopted? Has this been proven effective as an arrangement? Mr. Ho, yes, since 2012, we have asked PolyU and Hong Kong UST to come up with this sort of criterion. She's asking whether have you followed up on this rule, and have you relaxed the rule or what? By now, we have tightened actually the rule. By how much? By how much? Any rough idea? If not, you can give us the answer in writing. Why did I ask that, Chairman? Because it has nothing to do with me personally, but I can see that many people have complained about roadworks. So I really wonder whether the government can do a better job. Because we're talking about, traffic congestion and then delay in people's journeys, and people are not happy, and they would put the blame on the government, and you may feel aggrieved. And then if people, maybe you are now emotionless because you've been criticized too much. The government has been criticized too much by the public. But can you really improve your work even more? And the excavation works, the tools used, and the procedures. I think with all those, tools and procedures, I think for some emergency situations, it can be really done very soon. For example, burst water pipes, that can be repaired in 3 days.
So it can be done really quickly. I think you would know that there had been massive bursting of pipes of the WSD near the airport, and it only took them 3 days. So how come they could do it so swiftly? Can you tighten it up so that you could impose a fine, and you could start imposing fines if they start to delay even for 1 day? And about penalizing public utility companies. It's actually the subcontractors working for the contractors that bear the brunt. So that's why I suggest that you should tighten it up and force the public utility companies to pay more for workers to speed up the work. Well, and also because works tend to be difficult, it's really difficult for the subcontractors. And you are imposing a very, very light fine of $40. The problem is it's not deterrent enough. Another point is that it is actually wrong to penalize the subcontractors. The applicant is the public utility companies. You should fine them instead. The Hong Kong Electric, CLP, and the Town Gas, you should penalize them. It really means so little to them. if you impose a very light fine. So do you understand the public sentiment and the public outcry relayed by Dr. Ann Chang? You don't need to give her a reply. Just note her comment. Any more questions, Dr. Ann Chang? All right, I just really want some improvement. I think they've undertaken to make improvements with the Public Accounts Committee. Well, he just referred to a preliminary idea of having public ducts. Yes, let me supplement. Starting from June, we started a study. Our focus is on new development areas so that we can have common utility tunnels to accommodate as many public utilities as possible. And in this study, of course, we need to look at the construction management, maintenance and repair, as well as safety and liability. Now, on the point of safety, we may have gas pipes, and there is a question on whether they could be put together with other ducts and pipes and how. And we therefore need to wait for the completion of study next year. At the same time, in the Smart City Blueprint, we've also proposed that for Lok Ma Chau Loop area NDA, we will look into how we can use public utility tunnels to house public facilities. And we're working in that direction. And would you like to have more information? Yes, please. Does it mean that in the future, with the public utility tunnel, that will be all, and you will monitor the tunnel, and there will not be any more excavation by other companies? And would you also consider having box culverts? Well, don't just give a casual answer. She should be coached how to put questions properly. Well, the goal of having a public utility tunnel is to minimize excavation works as much as possible so that there is an opening for maintenance personnel to carry out maintenance works. And in other cities, they have similar structure, albeit a different way of management. Mr. Chu. Thank you, Chairman. I need to confirm something with you about the fee for extension. Are we referring to A and B of the schedule? Is that the total sum the permittee is required to pay? A and B together, right. Extension by how many days? That's covered under B, economic cost, so right. So my next question is about Cap 28. In relation to the fees to be charged due to extension, is there any stipulation? Because I think it's quite a general description here. For example, 18A, under proper stipulation by the authority, the fees may be the fees payable may be set out. And just now you mentioned the economic costs, say for traffic congestion. Is that the basis of your calculation of costs? It's such a complex question. It doesn't matter if you can't answer now. Just go back and give us a supplementary paper. Because if you give an answer now, it will be put on record. And if you give a wrong answer, it will be difficult to go ahead. So these are complex questions. You need to give clear answers, but do try. It doesn't matter if you can't answer now. You can give us information later. Yes, please. We will supplement the paper later. But do you have a ready answer for him to satisfy him? That is, what I can tell Mr. Zhu is that our fees are set out in Schedule 1 or Annex 1, A3 and 4 relating to extension, together with the several items under B. That's A3, A4. Extension of an excavation permit. We have a fixed fee, and then 9, 10, 11 at the back of the page relate to economic costs. Mr. Zhu. Chairman, I think what we're trying to discuss is this. I think when the government makes this regulation, there must have been a discussion on economic costs, how it should be set. At the moment, under the ordinance, there is no explanation on this point. From the perspective of the general public, I would feel that, for example, after an extension, what you're trying to do is to calculate the economic cost of traffic congestion as a result of the extension. And I don't think the department is sending a message to the developer or to the public that the government would impose punishment. Or you ask several questions. In fact, they can answer your questions at the next meeting, all right? Chairman, I don't know whether it's necessary to have another meeting. Well, if they're unable to answer your questions now, we need to be responsible. You have put forward some questions. If they're able to answer your questions, so be it. But they may not be able to answer you here and now. As members, I don't think we mind having another meeting. I've given you a timetable just now. We won't be able to make it on the 18th, and there will still be time. So go ahead if you have other questions. If they can't answer you here and now, let's not force them. I want to make sure that the public officers will not be forced to give us an answer immediately if they're unable to do so. Be fair to them. I agree, because in my first round of questions, I do need another reply in writing. It's all right. We can have several more meetings. I am seldom the chairman. Anyway. Thank you. I have no other questions now. So, Chairman, how about next time we can talk about the guidelines? Because they refer to the guidelines on how applications are approved. So perhaps they can give us more information about that. Next point. They also mentioned a study on public utility tunnel. The study will be completed next year. They need to check the legislation and to have public consultation. We're approaching the end of 2018. Can they tell us exactly when next year it will be ready? Another point about economic cost. Well, you just now already asked whether they have factored in the economic cost of the general public and business owners. You should factor them in as well. Don't just calculate your own costs. And this should be included in the financial penalty so that they will be deterred from casually putting up a sign outside shops and buildings saying that the road works are in progress. All right, I need three things. Mr. Zhu also asked 2 questions. Go back, take your time, and you'll be informed of the next meeting. Do we have a timetable? Will you be able to make it in time? You'll be given more time. How about the 20th? Well, okay with me in principle. All right, at the next meeting, Tuesday, 20th of November, 10:45. How about the afternoon, please? All right, in the afternoon, you'll be informed of the actual time. And thank you. Thank you, everyone.